This is the Stand Ups Throwdown MMA podcast. That's right, another podcast that brings together comedians and fighters to talk all things UFC, MMA, and sometimes a little bit more. I'm your host, as always, Bryan Lacey. Thanks for joining me. That's right, we are back again with the Stand Ups Throwdown MMA podcast. With me, your host, Bryan Lacey. You're travelling Wilbury of a host. You're your littlest hobo of a host. I did say hobo then. I'm back. It's 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks, and I apologise. I know it's been 3 weeks because you told me. That's right. Quite a lot of you give me a little nudge on Twitter or a poke in the ribs on that's quite apt this week, isn't it? A poke in the ribs on by email or other means, and I apologise. I am sorry. I've been away in two different places over the last 3 weeks. I was in America for 2 weeks with the family, doing the Florida Disney thing. That was amazing, great fun. And I do promise you, I did try and sort out a couple of fighter interviews while I was there, but trying to balance a family schedule of theme parks and Mickey Mouse with a fighter schedule and the very limited gaps in between training was difficult. So after 4 days of attempting it, I just gave up. I put down tools and thought I'm going to enjoy this time with the family and have a good holiday. So we did, and I hope you'll forgive me for that. It was a brilliant time. I absolutely loved it. I also think I broke the record for most amount of chicken wings eaten in a 2 week period. And I think I broke that record because now none of my clothes fit, and I'm diabetic. So not really. But it was great. I ate a lot of chicken wings and drank a lot of American beer. So back to the gym for me, I think. Also ticked a little box while I was out there, and that's not a euphemism. I did a gig, or I did 2 gigs while I was in America. I did 1 gig in the first week and got invited back to do a weekend slot on the following week, which was great fun. Both gigs were good. Enjoyed the American crowds, the American people, the clubs. They were great fun, really nice. I gigged with some lovely comedians as well. 10 in all, and I'll be honest. The only thing that disappointed me about the American comedy circuit is out of the 10 comics that I gigged with, I told all of them about this podcast. And can you guess, just have a guess, how many of the 10 you think were actually into the UFC or MMA? That's right, yeah, 0. I think you guessed from my sarcastic tone, and none of them, none. Can you believe that? 10 comics and none of them into UFC or MMA. So you've got to pull your finger out, America. We've got to get this sorted, but we will get an American comic on at some point. So I did America for 2 weeks. That was great. And then I also did I did some gigs last week. Went out to Turkey to do some gigs for ISIS. It wasn't ISIS. I did some gigs in a lovely 5-star, wonderful hotel. Can you imagine doing a gig for ISIS? My God, yeah. Any suicide bombers in? Just cleaning up after the heckles would be a big job for anyone. No, so it wasn't for ISIS. It was lovely holiday makers out there. So a great time. But it kept me away for 3 weeks from the podcast. So I do apologise. I am sorry. I hope you've been all right. I hope you've fed and watered yourselves. You're all dressed and you've coped with the amount of MMA news that's been coming at you for the last 3 weeks, and there has been plenty of it. We've had some news as well, ladies and gentlemen. This podcast, while I was away, completely out of the blue, a nice surprise, won an award. That's right. We got given a podcast bursary award. This is a thing set up by a gentleman called Mike Sheldon over here. So hello to Mike, and thank you for the award. It's basically he set up his own little and another podcast described this because he's done it for a few podcasts, a thing called micro philanthropy. Basically, he listens to a lot of podcasts and he wanted to give back, so he set up a little fund, and we've been given a little chunk of it. Yeah, we got nominated by another podcast called the Stand Ups. No, that's me. That's funny. But called the Comedian's Comedian Podcast. They nominated us. A gentleman called Stuart Goldsmith, another comic. He hosts that podcast, and he nominated us. And via that, Mike Sheldon's given us a little bit of money to help improve the podcast, what we do, and how we do it. So I'm going to put that towards hopefully improving the website. So I'm going to build the website so it's more of a hub for the podcast, and we can all interact via that and promote it and that sort of stuff. So a big thank you to Mike and to Stuart for that. Really did make my, I'll be honest, made my year, knowing that we got after just 11-12 podcasts, we're getting recognised and getting a little bit back. So I've chuffed to bits with that. Thank you very much. Other bit of news is our very own Peter Knox from We Are MMA UK. He's been been given the huge responsibility, the great privilege of organising the official hashtag UFC Glasgow after party. And he's setting it up nicely. He's got all the main fighters going there. So Jojo Calderwood will be going there. Jojo Smith's a comedian, and she's from Scotland. Jojo Calderwood is going to be there. Stephen Ray, Robert Whiteford, all in a brilliant venue, and he's sorting out tickets. There'll be lots of lovely promo girls wandering around, selling us all sorts of drinks and that sort of thing. I wish I could go, to be honest. I'm gigging somewhere else in the country, so I can't even make it to UFC Glasgow. But this would be an amazing event. I'll put up links to the tickets, and if you want to get in contact with Peter Knox himself, at NoxyCube on Twitter, he'll help sort you out, getting into the venue and let you know a little bit about what else is going on there. Very exciting for him indeed. And a big thank you to at We Are MMA UK again for being a sponsor for the podcast. Thank you for supporting us, and in particular Lee Parkin, who's been doing a huge amount of stuff on social media for me to keep the podcast going while I was away for the 3 weeks. So thank you very much, Lee. Really do appreciate it. So back to this podcast. So it's going to be slightly different. It's just going to be me talking with you because I was away for 3 weeks. It was hard to organise another comedian within his schedule or her schedule. And also because I've been away for a week, I didn't really want to travel away from the family. So I'm doing this on my own. I've got 2 wonderful interviews for you. I'll talk to you a little bit about the news and the upcoming fights in and around those interviews. And we should have a good time. Just relax and enjoy it. The 2 interviews are great as well. We've got Mathew Dawley, who's an amateur MMA fighter, member of hashtag Team MMA for Life, who's vying to become the first fighter to take on CM Punk. And he's got quite a good argument. He's building up quite a good bit of heat on the underground forums, on the MMA forums. So very interesting to hear about how this started, how the momentum's built up, and why he thinks he should be the first opponent for CM Punk. And then also on top of that, and I'm chuffed to bits to bring you this gentleman, Brad One Punch Pickett. One Punch Brad Pickett is coming on this podcast. He's one of my all-time favourite fighters. Pioneer for UK MMA, represents it so well, and what an exciting fighting style. He talks to us about his move back up to 135, coming off the back of a 2-fight losing streak. His next opponent, and the very dangerous, highly touted young 18-0, 23-year-old Almeida. On the UFC July 11th card, and then also he talks to us very frankly about the Reebok sponsorship deal and how it affects him and his identity and all that sort of stuff. So I'll be bringing you those very quickly. So we will touch on the news of the week before we bring you those interviews. Obviously the big news, the big rumour is Aldo could be out of this fight with McGregor. That's hugely disappointing if that is the case. There's a lot of smoke, and there's not usually smoke without fire. It's interesting that on the same week that he said he's brought sparring partners in to mimic McGregor, he gets his ass kicked. I don't know if that's a sign for what would happen in the fight. I don't know, but it's interesting that this close to the fight this has happened. It's upsetting more than interesting. Dana White has flown out there to talk to Jose Aldo. I think Dana White's probably on the flight grown his hair so that he could pull it out, and that's not even mine. I saw that on Twitter. That's a very funny phrase. He's grown his hair so he can pull it out. And Lorenzo Fertitta must be absolutely crap in their pants that they're about to lose this lovely fight. It's also interesting. People are sort of saying, should there be somebody step in to fight McGregor? And the usual candidates are coming up. Edgar's already said he'll take the fight on 18 days' notice. Faber as well. Joseph Duffy, the first, he's only had 1 fight in the UFC, but he's the last man to beat McGregor, has said he'll happily step in for that fight. I just don't know whether the UFC will do it. This is their golden goose. McGregor, Aldo, the whole promo behind it, the embedded series, the £1 million promo advert, $1 million promo advert they put together for the fight. I don't know if they're going to risk it at all. I think Pederneiras is Aldo's trainer. He said if he's out, if it is a broken rib, if he's out with and can't train, he wants to fight on July the 11th. But if he can't train, then it would be and this is only if the rib is minorly damaged, at least October, maybe pushing towards the end of the year, maybe even to the start of 2016. And to be honest, I think Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta would probably make them wait that way. I think Edgar's a dangerous matchup for McGregor. McGregor's much bigger, but I still think it's a very, very dangerous opponent to put him in against. And also, it is their goal. is their golden egg. He's brought more hype not just to this division but to the UFC than any other fighter in a long, long time. It could be interesting. The next 24 hours will be the most interesting to see exactly what the facts of the injury are and to see what happens. We shall wait and see with bated breath. Fingers crossed. It's an injury that would still allow Aldo to fight, but because it's an injury and it's also so well. It's been talked about so much. There's already a ready-made excuse if anything does go wrong, but it's not great that your opponent is so aware of an injury that you've had during a camp this close to the fight. So we shall wait and see. Fingers crossed that we still get this fight, but on July 11th. But I can see it being pulled. Obviously, they've got McDonald versus Lawler for the welterweight title still in there. So we will wait and see what happens with that. So yeah. Interesting times indeed, ladies and gentlemen. It's the gift that keeps on giving and taking, the UFC, isn't it? Every so often. One thing to say it did give us was an excellent display last week from Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Joanna champion, if you will. Brilliant display of striking and takedown defense. Juliana Pena did brilliantly in the build up to the fight, not letting Joanna get into her head. But once we got in there, it was clear who the more dangerous fighter was. And at 115 pounds to cause that amount of damage to another human being, it just shows the technique and the power she can generate because of that technique and how dangerous she is. That cut across Juliana's nose was nasty. That was not a pretty sight. Very hard to see a lady get beaten that badly. And Joanna sort of said, "We brought you a war, didn't we?" At the end of the fight, and I think you're not quite correct there, Joanna, because a war implies that two people will be fighting, and by the end of the first round, it was very well. By the end of the first minute, it was very clear that you were head and shoulders above. Interesting times indeed for that division. Can't see who to put in next against Joanna. Paige Van Zant's name has been bandied around a bit. Too early, I think, and we don't want that face ruining just yet, do we? There's plenty more promos for Reebok and UFC to use before Joanna breaks that face. But she's injured, Joanna, so that will give the division time to settle and sort of form a queue. There's Degalia, and there's someone else I can't remember. Her name has just come into the UFC, and we'll wait and see what happens with their fights. Rose Namajunas as well is always a favourite, and if Jojo Calderwood pulls off an exciting display against Beck Rawlings, that would put her straight back up there as well. So we shall wait and see what happens with that. Now, but let's not wait and see any more about these interviews, because look, let's get on with it. Like I said, two wonderful interviews. Matt Dawley talked to me last week about his campaign to become to get into the UFC site, to become the first fight against CM Punk. So let's hear from him. He's a lovely gentleman, member of team #MMA for life. So really, really excited to bring you Matt Dawley. So here we are, it's Bryan Lacey from the Stand Ups Throwdown MMA podcast, and I'm talking to an MMA fighter called Mathew Dawley. Have I pronounced that right?
Yep, you're right on.
Bang on, Mathew Dawley. Now, it's not a name many people will have heard, if any MMA fans, until the last few weeks. But you're a name that's vying to become one of the most well-known names in MMA by way of becoming CM Punk, aka Phil Brooks' first opponent. Is that right, mate?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of searching out to do.
That sounds exciting. And when did this little chase begin?
Well, to be honest with you, it kind of began when they announced that he was going to be fighting for the UFC, and it actually kind of started, if I can speak about it for just a second, it actually started at my work, at my fire station, and we were watching those fights live, because it was free cable, and they introduced him and announced it, and a bunch of my coworkers were all sitting, watching it, and they all, asked the 5,000 questions. I honestly, at the time, didn't know who he was, because I hadn't watched professional wrestling since I was a child, and it just snowballed into, well, is he going to be good? Who's he going to fight? And then one of them was like, could you beat him? And I was like, yeah, the guy's probably never really trained. I've had a few fights. He hasn't had any. Like, I'm pretty sure if I fought him, I would beat him just on experience alone. And it just kind of started to snowball in my brain. I took it to some, MMA forums online and like cast the line out there, and some people bit with it, was like, do it, just do it, go for it. So that's kind of how it started, and it's been a rapid incline, of people getting on board and supporting. So I'm very much thankful for it.
I love the story, mate, because it's pretty much the way most blokes end up in most trouble most of the time, when other blokes are stood around talking with each other and going, "Can you do that?" And the way men are, the way our egos grow, we go, "Yeah, we can do that. Of course we can." And now you're building up some momentum. So this is actually this potentially could happen, sir. Are you up for going through with this?
Well, that's funny, because that's something that has been asked to me. Is another interviewer asked me this, and some other people tell me, so if you get this, you're going to be like instantly famous overnight. And I have never been famous. I've always been popular within my friends, but I've never been famous, so I don't know what it all entails. But I don't think it'll change me or anything like that. I am who I am, and to be honest with you, I totally am not doing this for the fame. I'm doing it for like my family and for the name of my family. Like I'm one of those old school people where it's like I want my name to mean something so I can pass it on to my children so they can be like, this was my dad and this was what he did. So that's kind of what it is for me. So I'm not looking for any fame. And to be honest with you, if they did pick me for this fight, I know it would be a one-fight contract and a one and done. And even if I win, lose, draw, it doesn't matter. And I'll go right back into being a peasant with my own normal life again. I'm not hoping that I'm really not hoping my movie career spins off because of this at all.
That's funny. That's it.
Yeah, I love my job. I love being a fireman. I would not leave it for anything.
So when did the MMA path begin then? You're 31. Is that right? 31 now.
Fortunately, I turned 32 a couple weeks ago.
Couple of weeks ago. There you go. What date's your birthday? You a Gemini?
Yeah, I'm a Gemini. June 2nd.
Oh, you see, I'm May 31st, sir, but I'm a little bit older than you. But what I was about to say is, you've had 3-1, aren't you? 4 MMA fights. When did your sort of passion for MMA start, and when did you start competing, getting in the cage and actually competing in MMA?
Well, the idea, the passion to compete started when I was a kid, because I wrestled all through grade school and high school. So, it's just like you can't wait for winter to come and go to wrestling tournaments on Friday, Saturday. And, I joined the military straight out of high school. And when I got stationed where I live now, I just joined our local high school wrestling team, and I was a volunteer assistant coach. And I loved it, but I joined because I still wanted to be a wrestler. Well, when you're a coach, you're not a wrestler. So what ended up happening was, after a few seasons of that's when I actually started to look in the martial arts, because I had known of guys like Mark Coleman, or these guys that were wrestlers that came over to MMA, and I thought, well, if some of them did it, and of course this is like before it was really popular, this is before the TV show Ultimate Fighter and all that, I actually started going to judo schools and jiu-jitsu schools and stuff like that, and I ended up finding a combat submission wrestling school at the time, and it was game over there. So I trained there, and I loved it, and ended up doing some grappling tournaments, and all that stuff, and winning and losing, and it just, doing the art itself, CSW, because it involves striking and everything, I just thought, to hell with it. I'm going to do it one time, And then I made the mistake of winning, so I said, I'm going to do it again.
What a stupid thing to have done, sir. That's it. And what was that first fight like? What was talk us through the promotion you were working for and how that fight went?
I tell you what, my first fight was such a unique experience because it wasn't at a MMA event. It was at, where you have the typical, there's an arena, there's a cage, people show up, music plays. No. My first fight was at the Arnold Schwarzenegger Martial Arts Festival in 2006. And
that's brilliant.
It's in the Nationwide Arena, which is a huge hockey arena, and there are just gobs of martial arts things going on. And they had a ring in the center. that they actually had pro MMA fights in the night before, and they were using that same ring all day for kickboxing and Thai boxing and boxing, all kinds of stuff. And then you got to think there's brick breaking, there's Special Olympics, there's jiu-jitsu, there's judo tournaments going on. So when it got time for the MMA, because it was starting to become like the peak of interest in the martial arts world, a lot of the action did slow down on the other stuff. But I always remember this, there was no locker room. We were warming up on the mats where the jiu-jitsu tournament was going on or judo tournament was going on, and we were 15 feet away from the ring when they called, and you didn't even know when you were fighting. They just called your name. It was like, hey, you're next.
Fight bingo. So, that's crazy.
Yeah, B-I-N-G, go fight somebody. But no, they were like, hey, you're next. And I went out, and I had no idea who I was fighting. And as I climb into the ring, I look over, and literally right beside the stairs to the ring was this, like, bald guy with a goatee and tattoos on his neck, and he was breaking bricks with his forehead.
Oh, my God.
And I was just like, thank God I'm not fighting that guy. It made me very much more excited about the person I ended up drawing. And I think the guy was like, he'd had 1 or 2 fights and a loss, and he was a very game opponent, but he was just kind of like a short, pudgy dude. And, like he came after me by all means, but I just outclassed him. And he actually took me down. I swept him, mounted him, punched him a few times. He gave me his arm, and I armbarred him. So
beautiful. There we go. Ronda Rousey-esque. I like it. I'm not jealous of you having to go on that canvas, that mat, after it's had one full night of MMA on it, then followed by that a full set of kickboxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu. That mat must have been some sticky to stand on by the time you got on there.
I tell you what's cool is back then you didn't know any better, but or I didn't know any better, I should say, but the names that fought on that card were some pretty powerhouse names. Wes Sims,
Yeah, of course.
Matt Lindland. I'm pretty sure War Machine, he fought on that card. Dustin Hazelett. I mean, there were some guys that weren't names. I mean, like Matt Lindland obviously was a name, and Wes Sims was a name. But there were guys on there that weren't really names at the time, and they end up becoming names later. And dude, I mean, it was kind of surreal to climb in that ring, because it was a pretty big freaking ring, and there's just all this blood all over it and stuff, and I was just like, I'm a dumbass.
What am I doing? There we go. But at least you weren't breaking bricks with your head at the side of the cage. That's a good thing. So was Arnie there? Did Arnie see this? Has Arnie witnessed one of your fights?
No. Just before the MMA started, they like walked him into the arena and they shut it down, and they did like he gave a speech, and what they actually did, which I thought was cool, they let the children that were involved with the Special Olympics thing, they kind of put on like some of their forms or their shows, because they were doing like weapon stuff or katas, and he watched a couple of them do it, and I thought that was awesome, because those kids were like grade school, so for them to do it in front of Arnold was much cooler than us grown-ass men punching each other in the face.
That is pretty cool. Very, very cool indeed. So that was your first fight. You've done 3-1 now. The other 3 wins are finishes, is that correct?
Yeah, all my wins all my fights were finishes. All 3 of them, I think, all 3 of my wins, 2 were arm bars and 1 was a submission and a strikes. And is
that your sort of style now? Would you say that, who would you say you emulate most in the UFC? Who's the fighter that, if people who don't know you were to think of a fight, what sort of style do you match up with?
I would say that growing up into the sport when I was, much younger, a decade ago, I wanted to be a lot like Matt Hughes, was because I wrestled and he would slam people, and I like the idea of slamming people. I've actually got a couple slams in my fights, and I wanted to be a slamming wrestler that punched people, like that was kind of my style, but that's kind of gone piss in the wind, and I don't even know who I'm way more of a complete fighter now than I was back then. Not saying I'm really complete, because dear God, compared to the top level guys, I'm not. But I mean, I have way better striking and way better jiu-jitsu, and that whole 9 yards. So, I mean, I'm just like any other fighter that does the game now. There's really nobody to emulate off of because everybody's so gosh damn good at every single aspect of the sport, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's evolved so much over the last 5, 10 years. Well, even just the last 2, 3 years. You look at the fighters that are coming through. I mean, talking about this matchup, it sounds like you are pretty much the perfect sort of everyman to come in and do this. You've just mentioned you're a firefighter. I didn't realise you were in the military as well. You're a father. This is the you're the all-American coming in here. Plus, you've done a few slams. CM Punk would be used to a few slams in his previous life. This is like the perfect story, isn't it? This matches up so well, not just fight wise, but the story behind you has got to be something that's got to catch the UFC's eyes.
Well, that's kind of one of the reasons why I even, made the leap of faith of trying to do it, because like I sat and thought about it, and like one thing that interests me in the sport when I first got involved is I thought about, being a promoter or being a manager, because I like that side of it too. And so you think about matchmaking or putting, and I've coached and cornered lots of guys, and when you see that other side of the sport, like you think about it a lot. And so I took a couple of days and thought about it, and I thought it doesn't matter. Like the record is good. I haven't had any pro fights, and I've had less than 5 AMI fights. So on paper and legally, the athletic commission, wherever the fight will be, could sanction it. But that's not the only important factor. The other important factors is a matchup people want to see, you know what I mean? And I looked at the Herschel Walker fight situation, and I think that the UFC is going to handle it kind of similar to where they're going to get somebody with some fights and some experience, but at the same time, they're not going to have him fight a world beater right off rip because it's unfair,
Yeah.
And it obviously isn't going to be sanctioned. So I just thought about it if I would sell. And the thing is, I think that there are a lot of people that would sell. By no means am I the only one, and I may not even be the best one. But I think I do kind of fit the mold of what they could use, because he's this superstar. Like literally, he's not just a popular person, he's a superstar. I mean, he has gazillions of followers, on social media and stuff. And he is only getting the fight because of his popularity. And I'm fine with that. I'm not one of the haters. I actually am kind of a fan of the guy. I think he's handled everything pretty freaking awesome because he's respectful to the sport. He's not trying to dishonor the sport like some people have. And I give him all the respect in the world for that. But if you're going to give somebody like him a shot, give somebody else that, someone like me, give someone like me the shot too, because he is deserving because of his popularity, but he's not deserving because of his skill set. And even though I've had a few fights, I'm not really on like UFC level. You put me in with a 170 or 185 or in the UFC now, some of the lower tier guys I could probably hang with. I'm not saying I'd beat them, but like they wouldn't just walk over me.
Yeah.
But you put me against an upper tier guy, it's going to be a long night for me. But like I am the all-American kind of guy. I just got married. We have our second baby on the way. Just bought a house this year. I did serve in United States Air Force for 4 years as a karate fighter, and when I got out, I stayed in the fire service. I love it. The reason why I even got in this job is because I like helping people. It's my favorite thing to do on the planet. So I do kind of fit a lot of those molds, and I think it would be an easy market aspect for the UFC to push out there. Like we're going to give this superstar a fight, so what we're also going to do is take somebody else. I joke about, like I say this as a joke, but I don't mean it insultingly, but we pluck a peasant out of the big group, and give that guy a chance at it too. And why not? I mean, CM Punk really doesn't deserve to share the ring with some of those names, nor do I. But, if you're going to give it to him, give it to somebody like me and not even just to serving my country and serving my community. I've trained off and on at a couple different gyms for years and years. And, I've helped a bunch of guys get to their first or second amateur fights or in cornered them. I've been the guy that's always like mopped the mats and stayed late and clean and to help out. It's just, somebody like me, I feel if they're going to give it to him, deserves a shot as well.
I like it. Do you know what, mate? When I edit this podcast, I might stick some uplifting music behind that speech because it was it got me tingling, fella. I think it's a good argument and really well put as well, mate. I've got to take you back a little bit though because you just said you just said you just married. So how the hell are you getting away with talking about all this when you and how recently married are you? How close to you being newly married are you?
We got married less than a month ago.
You're kidding. How are you getting away with this, sir? Jesus, man, this is amazing. And what does your wife think of this whole campaign and the MMA career?
Well, the funny thing is since I've met my wife, I haven't fought. I mean, I've still trained here and there and off and on, and not daily and as regular as you'd like. But since I've met my wife, she's not exactly crazy about the fact that I fought. And she's not crazy about the idea of me doing it, but we both are supportive of what the other person wants to do.
Great.
So it's just kind of like, she just undid the leash off the collar, and she's like, you do what you got to do by all means. And I mean, she's supportive of it by all means, but I know she would rather I get a second job selling hot dogs or something.
I think you've less chance of losing some teeth in that second option. That's it. But first of all, congratulations as well, mate, on getting married. It's a beautiful thing. And did it all go? Where did you get married? Did it all go smoothly? Was it a nice, beautiful day for you?
It actually went great. We live on the East Coast in Florida, and we did a sunrise ceremony on the beach, which was awesome. The only unfortunate thing is it was at 6:15 in the morning. Which,
what?
Yeah. We had a small ceremony. Only about 15 people were there, so it wasn't like we woke up a bunch of people and marched them out to the beach. But it was beautiful. The wind was perfect. The weather was perfect. We both had our family there, and like we do have a 2-year-old son, and he was part of the wedding, and for him there to be there with us, it was just awesome. So I couldn't have wished it had gone any better. And the best part is she showed up. I was a little nervous.
There you go. She made the walk, as they say in MMA terms. She turned up. Oh, that's fantastic, mate. That's it. Well, let's get back to this this campaign for this fight, because I've read recently an article with CM Punk, and he was talking about how long he thinks away he is from stepping in the cage, and he's talking about Duke Rufus was saying maybe training for a full year before they decide when to pick an opponent and when to step in the cage. So that would mean he might not be fighting till sort of 2016. And you said you've not fought for a while already. Would you take another fight in that time in between? Would you just keep, because the other risk with that is, I suppose, if you'd have 2 or 3 fights in that time, or even 1 or 2, your record might exceed what the UFC are looking to match him up with. What's your thoughts on that, and how would you handle it?
To be honest with you, I've put a lot of thought into that, and my answer is I would like to if the UFC were to truly consider me, and it's going to be a while before they allow him to fight, I would want to talk to somebody, because it might be the case that they don't want me to fight anymore, that how my record stands is perfect, and they don't want to win or loss at it, and the fact that I haven't fought for a few years does, people have like the ring rust thing. I don't necessarily feel that way. Like, if you look at my record, I fought a couple times in 2006, and then I fought again in 2011. And I've had like jiu-jitsu tournaments and amateur kickboxing and stuff in there in between and since and all that 9 yards. But like, I didn't feel like ring rust, you know what I mean? I've wrestled since I was in the 3rd grade, so it's just like I could haul off to a tournament this weekend and, probably lose because, I'm not in competition shape, if you will, but I wouldn't have rust. I would go out there and compete at my level. But anyhow, getting back to it, if they were to say, look, we've narrowed it down to a list of 10 people, and you're on that list, he's not going to fight till, say, 2016. We want you to fight one more time in between there, and we want to see what you look like now as a fighter. My ass would be fighting somebody by the end of the year,
Yeah, of course,
There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, I mean, that's all there is to it. But that's kind of sort of one reason why I haven't tried to get a fight scheduled, if you will, because everybody at first like, yeah, you need to start fighting. And I was like, no, the intelligent thing to do is I legally can be sanctioned to fight him right now. If I go making that any more lopsided, I shoot myself in the foot.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, he's talking about 170 or 185. What weights have you fought at before in your other previous fights?
170 and 185.
Oh, there
So,
you go. Tick the boxes, mate.
And man, we can. If 175 is too far, we can meet at 170, or 170 is too far, we can meet at 175. We can meet at 180. It's all. I'll do whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, fair enough, man. And have you had any response from? I mean, I know you've only started to really try and push for it fairly recently, but you have built up quite a lot of momentum. I've looked on a lot of the websites, a few of the other interviews you're doing. There's a lot of support for you out there, mate. And have you had any feedback or any contact with the UFC or anybody close to it get behind you?
The closest thing I've had is I actually was stupid enough. I found Joe Silva's email on the internet, and I've actually emailed him, and he did respond, which I thought was a good sign. And he just responded like, "Thank you for your interest. I'll add you to the list. He's not going to be fighting for a long time," and that was pretty much it. I took it as a good thing because he wasn't like, "No, go away" or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've emailed him a few times since then, and he hasn't responded. So I just make sure that he knows I care, and I proactively email him about every 3 weeks to remind him that I'm thinking of him. Like if I have a new interview or a new something, I add the link and just say, hey, look, people care. It's getting a buzz. One thing I am trying to show to the UFC or Joe Silva or whoever is there's been a lot of people that have made threads or taken to the internet or taken to Twitter and been like, yeah, I want to fight this guy. But none of them have done anything like past that, and where I was jumping back to is you asked like how I would handle the fame. Well, like by starting this campaign and starting this movement, I pretty much subjected myself to a lot of backlash, and thankfully there hasn't been a lot. There's been some, but when you put, when you say like, I want to fight, I want his fight, I want to do it, whatever, you look like a coattail rider, and I don't want to be that, but I just want the chance, you know what I mean? So I pushed it. I've done this. I've made myself look like a crazy idiot, because I pretty much made a Twitter and started like getting follows, and people were just like, "Are you serious? You're really trying this?" And with the more momentum I've got, more people have come on board. Like I'm willing to go and do all that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not all these other people were. They just, I want the fight, and that's it. And they make a thread or two, and that's all they do. And so I feel like I am showing and pushing and trying and doing more. Hell, even if they don't choose me, I've at least created more of a buzz about CM Punk fighting in the 1,000 people or less that I've interacted with on social media, you know what I mean? So I'm at least helping them out.
They should pay you some money for that, at least, fella. And have you reached out to Phil Brooks himself? Have you actually sent any messages to CM Punk?
I haven't sent any emails or direct messages, but I've tagged him in some of my stuff on Twitter, and I've actually replied to some of the things he's tweeted. Nothing disrespectful, because I don't have anything disrespectful to say to the guy, but some of his fans had some stuff to say.
Don't mess with wrestling fans, man. But, do not mess with wrestling fans. They are a serious bunch of animals out there.
Well, I'll tell you this, from the age of 5 to 15, I was a wrestling fan, so I know exactly what they're capable of. But I mean, what's funny is, for the most part, they're all good sports about it, and I even gained some of his fans as my fans. They're like, dude, we'd love to see somebody like you get to fight. Because, you got all these people like F him, break his nose, all that stuff. I get it. Don't get me wrong, I get it, but we were all that guy once upon a time. He has a passion, and he has a desire, and he's man enough to do it. With his fame and his money, he doesn't have to do this, how I say I'm subjecting myself to, like, a backlash, he's subjecting himself to way more of a back. If he were to fight somebody, go out there, get knocked out in one punch, he is never going to live it down, man.
No, man, that is it. Some people are praying for that, aren't they, as well? They would like to see him fall so hard. But it's a brilliant story, mate. I've got to say, I'm really enjoyed it. And if people want to find you on Twitter, show you some support, where can they get your details and Facebook and all that? Give yourself a plug so we can get a few people behind you.
Well, man, I'll take anybody that wants to support the movement. Welcome aboard. My Twitter is @Dawley170, so DAWLEY 170. The hashtag that's kind of got the most popularity is CM Punk versus Dawley, and all kinds of stuff have been hashtagged with that. I also if I can give a plug, I got to give a big thanks to hashtag Team MMA for Life, because those guys have been my biggest supporting factor with all this. The guys and girls of that group on Twitter. I mean, without them, I wouldn't have 4 Twitter followers.
They're a beautiful part of the MMA community, and they do a lot for my podcast as well. They're the people that got me in touch with you as well. So we'll be definitely giving them a big shout out. We'll be hyperlinking any of your tweets, interviews, all that sort of stuff. We're getting right behind you for this fella. I've got to say, congratulations on how far you've got with it so far, because there is momentum building, and we're going to watch with bated breath to see if we can make this this become a reality. So hit us up whenever you need something, fella, and the best of luck with the rest of it, all right?
Yeah, and I want to give a big thanks to you, a big thanks to any fans out there watching. Love me, hate me, whatever. Thank you for being a part of the sport. Come join the movement. CM Punk versus Dawley. Be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Love it, man. We will speak soon. Take care, fella, all right?
Hey, stay safe, brother.
Cheers, man. Bye-bye. So that was Mathew Dawley. What a lovely bloke, and ticks all the boxes, doesn't he, for this upcoming fight. If you haven't heard of him, Google him, find out a little bit more about him. Follow him on Twitter as well, @Dawley170, DAWLEY 170 on Twitter. Get behind him. I think it would be great to see almost like a Rocky story, wouldn't it? Somebody plucked from obscurity to go up against somebody with such a name as CM Punk for this. So big thank you to Mathew for sparing the time. Get behind his campaign, follow him on Twitter, let him know you had a little listen to the interview, and we'll see if we can make this happen over the next 12 months. It'll probably only happen because of us. I'm sure Joe Silver definitely listens to this podcast. So that was Mathew Dawley. Now moving on to somebody with no experience in the UFC, but trying to get in and make his name, to somebody who has a huge name in the UFC and is now trying to find his way back onto the winning path, and that is One Punch Brad Pickett. Very excited to bring you this interview. Really funny bloke, opened up nicely about all sorts of stuff, so sit back, relax, enjoy the wonder that is One Punch Brad Pickett. So here we are. I'm very excited. It's Bryan Lacey talking to Brad, One Punch Pickett. Thank you for joining me, mate. How are you feeling? How's things out in Florida?
All good in Florida, doing my training, well, should I say finish my training camp out here. I do train when I'm back in England, but I just come out here like the last 7 weeks of a fight just to, knuckle down and concentrate on the fight and pick up the training, and also get a bit well, not quite, I'd say get a bit of colour, but I don't really step back.
I was going to say, you don't get much colour through those gym windows, do you? That's not how it works. Well, I've just been out there. Literally, we got back from Florida 2 days ago, so I'm fighting jet lag as we speak. But Florida for me is Disney World, chicken wings and pancakes. It's a little bit of a different experience for you, I take it, mate?
Yeah, a lot different. For me, Florida's dieting, getting punched in the face, and sweating a lot.
That's me gigging in Newcastle, to be honest, mate. That sounds very similar. So how do you split your time out there? Have you got a base in Florida? What's the ratio of how much you live in England and how much you live out in the beautiful world of Florida?
Well, I'm English and always will be. That's always going to be my home. So I live in England. I have a house, I have a wife back home and stuff like that. So that's my life. I train there, I teach there, I coach there as well. But when I have a fight lined up, I train there and get myself in I say shape back in England. I do my S&C and like I say, a spa still, and I do a lot of training back home. But what I like to do is get away from my day-to-day distractions and then move from my home to out to Florida. I've been doing that for years at American Top Team. We got a great bunch of guys here, my size as well. And it's not just the training partners here are so good. It's just also, like I say, to get away from my day-to-day distractions back home, where obviously back home I have to travel a little bit further to train, and I don't know. I just get away from my day-to-day distractions, really.
I suppose it flips the switch a little bit as well, mate, doesn't it? If you're going into fight camp, it sets you up mentally for what you.
Plane lands, I know I'm here for business, you know, and I knuckle down. I train smart, you know. I have to, you know, eat better. I do everything better when I'm here.
Oh, good on you, man. That's it. So America gets the best of you. Is that what you're telling us, Brad? Is that what you're telling us, UK fans? We just get the leftovers. Is that right?
Yeah. No, but basically when I'm back home, I'm kind of like, it's like I normally have a lot of I chill out, because you can't train as hard as we do all year round. Especially at my age. Two, I can't just break down my body the whole time. You know, I'm not like 21. You know, where you can just go crazy. I have to be a lot smarter with my training.
Of course, mate. Of course. And so, when did the relationship with American Top Team start? Because I looked, I mean, you've got just around your weight class. There's some absolute killers that you're obviously sparring with, like John Lineker, Mirsad Bektic, who's flying up the ranks. Even Robert Whiteford, people out there like that. I mean, how did that start? When did you start making a trip out to America to progress your career?
Well, I've been here for years. So I've been here way before any of those guys even probably started training. So I've been out here, I don't know, been coming out here, it's like 6-7 years maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, like I mean, I come out like 2-3 times a year. Every time I had to train a fight, I come out here to do my training camp. You know, so I've been coming out here a long time. How it started off, I was like, I was cage rage champion at the time at 145 actually, back in the day, and Dave O'Donnell and Andy Gear, who owned the show, wanted to send a few of their champions out to American Top Team, just to, like, the English-based fighters, so they could improve their wrestling and the rest of that work like that. So I remember them sending me, Paul Daly, out back in the day. And when I came out here, I met Mike Brown, and then me and Mike Brown have been like, you know, best friends ever since. He was like the best man at my wedding when we hit off. So every time now I come back to America, I just always stay at Mike Brown's house. You know?
Oh, fair play, man. And Mike Brown is fast becoming one of the best cornermen out there. I think you've done a very clever thing there. Make one of the best cornermen your best man. It's a cheeky way of getting some extra time on the mitts with him, I suppose.
Yeah, your best man always your cornerman too.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And what did your best man do for your stag do? Let's hear what an MMA fight.
To be fair, he wasn't. I had two best men, my brother and Mike Brown. Mike Brown, obviously being in America, I was going to have two stag do's. I was going to have one in England and one in America, but I ended up just having one back in England, which Mike Brown actually couldn't make. He came to my wedding, obviously. But, he didn't make it. But on my stag do, I had the most legendary stag do, because I was dressed up as Darth Vader, and everyone else, all the entourage, was dressed up as stormtroopers. So there was me and 30 stormtroopers walking around Bournemouth, and so if you look at my Twitter and stuff like that, and my Instagram, you'll see pictures of of Darth Vader and loads of stormtroopers, and people don't realise that it was me on my stag do. It was amazing. We got so much love out there.
That's wicked.
He was actually in the local newspapers as well.
That's wicked, mate. That's fantastic. And what activity did you do on the stag do? Usually over here, the theme is you do something that could almost kill you, like paintballing or quad biking.
I mean, in America, where they always go to strip joints and all that sort of stuff. I don't care about that sort of stuff. It doesn't do me. But
let's be honest, mate. As well, a strip joint in Bournemouth is going to be a little bit different to an American one. I reckon the poles might be a bit thicker.
Yeah, but I ended up going doing what was it? It's like a wet and wild sort of thing during the day, you know, where it was it was team-based games, you know, it was funny. You know,
oh, cool.
kind of like a short courses kind of thing. We done that during the day, and we just went out as stormtroopers in the evening. So it was fun, and then we all just woke up on a Sunday.
Oh, fantastic. And I will ask quickly, what's the was your wife with you before you started MMA?
Yeah, she's been with me. Well, no, not when I started MMA. Like, I've been fighting a couple of years, and then she met me. It was quite a weird one. Like, she never knew anything about fighting before she met me, sort of thing. And now she's actually quite a big UFC fan.
Superb. That's it.
Only through association. Like, she's from Wimbledon. She comes from a very good background and stuff like that. So it's like she would never ever in a million years would have got into fighting if it wasn't for me.
Oh, that's super. What I also want to know is, has she seen the evolution of your nose? Has she seen it move slowly to the right?
Actually, no. I've had it the same the whole time, because I actually broke my nose when I was 19 playing basketball, and that's how I broke my nose. I didn't break my nose fighting at all.
Wow, look at that. I wouldn't have expected basketball. First of all, British person basketball. Also, at your height, was that one of the sports you were into then when you were younger?
I was actually pretty good at it. When I was younger, I classed myself as an athlete and a sportsman. Any sport I played football at a good level. I played cricket at a good level. Played basketball at a good level. Box I've done every sport you named it to quite a good level, sort of thing. But when I was younger, I always thought I was going to be like a professional footballer, because that was my main sport, and I loved that.
Yeah.
That was always my thing, but I actually broke my nose playing basketball on my own.
It gets even worse, mate. Come on, you should have said you lost that in your first fight or something. Make it up. Come on.
I should have said I got jumped by 15 guys. And I knocked out but one of them got me or something like that. But
that would have worked. Superb.
I broke it playing on my own.
Well, and how did you do that? Was that against the wall, or what happened, sir?
Well, this is another story. There was actually like a ring above an archway. It was in an old primary school, and there was like there was a kitchen canteen area, but there was like a massive archway which separates the sports hall from the canteen area, and it was just like an archway of a door, but a massive long door, you'd say.
Yeah.
And the ring was like above the door, but a few foot above the door. It wasn't like super high. It was just like, so I was like, I reckon I could dunk that, right? So I just ran full pelt, jumped up to dunk it, and not realising that the momentum would carry me onto the arch.
Straight into the arch. Oh my god!
And I went straight into the arch of the door. I hit my head so hard, I actually ended up doing a backflip and landed on my butt. So full rotation, landed on my butt. And I just obliterated. I had like 9 stitches in my nose, 6 stitches under my eye.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a mess. And that's when I was 19 at the time. I was boxing, just started boxing at the time, and I was supposed to have a fight like in a couple of weeks, and obviously I didn't end up. I had to pull out that fight.
Oh mate, it's not the most heroic story, but come on, blokes have always been stood there and thought we could do something and injured ourselves, haven't we?
I ran full pelt and hit my head full pelt, and I did knock myself out. So I'm like, that's when I knew I could take a punch.
I was wondering where the name One Punch came from, but now it's becoming very clear, mate.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, I'll take more than one punch.
Superb. Well, let's move on to this very exciting fight you've got signed up for yourself. UFC 189, Aldo versus McGregor, July 11th. You're fighting Thomas Almeida, a fight which sees you returning to bantamweight. How are you feeling about the matchup?
I'm stoked about the matchup. I'm really looking forward to it. Because making the weight at 125, I've done it a few times. It wasn't much of an issue anymore. I was getting it down. Don't get me wrong, it still sucked,
Yeah.
But it was my job. I could do it. What kind of didn't work out for me at 25 was the styles of matchups. It was just like I was chasing a guy for 15 minutes, and it's just not fun.
I think we were all surprised by the way that fight came around. We were so excited about the McCall fight, if that's the one you're referencing, and
And my last one against Chico Camus, he done the same thing.
Exactly. They seem to just think if they ran from you for 15 minutes, avoided the fight, they'd get the decision. And unfortunately, it seemed that they got it. They figured it out that way, which is a shame because they could have been great fights. You and McCall laying it down would have been one of the best fights of the year, I imagine.
Yeah, but it's one of those ones where, you know, like I knew they wouldn't do that anyway. But for me, I look at it. If I fought these guys and you just locked us in a big room and one of us guys will come out of that room and there's no time limit, I will come out of that room. There's no way they'll get beat by these guys, but they just find a way or beat me over 15 minutes but outpoints me and stuff like that. And so I just kind of like, I just always find I run out of time where, you know, it's not as if I'm battered and my face is hanging off and I'm getting knocked out.
Yeah.
They just outpointed me by hitting me and running away. But then how I see it is that eventually, if there's no time limit, I'll get hold of them and then, that'll be it. So well, I mean, I can't really cry about it because that's part of the sport that, you know, this way of winning, you know, end of the day, and it's important in the sport to win. Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I only went down to 125 because obviously I had a win over Demetrius Johnson, and I thought I probably could get a quick title shot, and because all my attempts to get in a title shot at 135 kind of like diminished every time I had fought like a top contender like Henan Burrell or Michael McDonald, so I always kind of fell short. So I thought I didn't want to be looked back in my career and ever be a woulda, shoulda, coulda. Yeah. Or maybe I did this. So I tried it. It didn't work out for me. Sod it. So now I'm going to go back up a weight class where I'm going to fight guys who are going to stand in front of me a bit more and trade, which they've given me this guy. Right. Thomas, I ain't seen him take a back step in one of these fights. So it's going to be interesting.
As soon as I heard this fight signed, mate, it's an exciting fight, especially for you, because that's what we need to see. Someone who's going to come and fight you, and I don't think you're going to struggle to find this guy in the octagon. He's 23 years old, 18-0, 15 finishes in the first round. Looked good against Yves Jaboin. Very patient, and his counter striking, especially looked really good. A great styles matchup for you. Is this? He's obviously looking to take a scalp. How are you approaching this? How's the camp gone so far?
Camp's gone really good. Also now I'm back up to 35, but I'm not dieting as hard, so I'm not training on an empty stomach and having a handful of nuts and berries before that sort of stuff. So I'm feeling good. My body feels a lot better, and I'm training actually a lot better and doing better in training because of the weight, I believe. You know, so. I'm punching harder, you know. I don't know. I just feel stronger, you know. So like I say, I could make 25, but I think naturally I'm a better 135 pounder, and with his style, you know, I think like you say, we're not going to find. It's not going to be hard to find each other in the middle of the cage, and it'd be one of those ones where maybe a test of who's got the better chin, you know, because we're definitely gonna crack each other. Because I've seen these fights, even though he's got really good stand up, he does get hit a bit as well. So do I. So we're both gonna get hit. So we're probably, if it's not one of us finishing one of us pretty quickly, me and him are going to probably look a complete mess at the end of the fight.
Well, stars are aligned for it to be a cracking matchup as well. Also, it's your I think it's your third time fighting in Vegas. This is probably your biggest card you fought on. Is that going to play a factor in it? The crowd, the size of the event?
Nah, not at all.
I love that. No, not bothered. Put me in a schoolyard, in a room, out the back of a bar. I'm absolutely fine. You're going to get the same guy. No worries.
Yeah. But for me, fine's fine. It's good to be a part of a big card, but that card's not about me. That card's all about Aldo and McGregor. So it's not as if I'm thinking, it's because of me. No, it's nothing to do with me. So it doesn't bother me as such. You know, I got my job to do that night. It doesn't matter where it is or what show it's on.
Great.
It's nice to be on the bigger card, you know, because more people are going to be witnessing it and stuff like that. But, you know, end of the day, it doesn't bother me, where you fight and that, you know.
Superb. Well, that's fair enough. I think it's also the other big question in my head is I think the Reebok deal kicks off then. Have they sorted you out a Reebok trilby and a Reebok vest?
I kind of still don't know what's going to go on with that. I definitely can wear my trilby, I believe. But I don't know about my vest and my braces and that sort of stuff. I need to find out about that because it's so strange, right? I've been offered money for years and years and years, like to wear a walkout T-shirt and all that sort of stuff, and I've always turned it down. Just like to keep my a bit of identity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. It's a brilliant thing as well. The Chaz and Dave, the trilby, it's British, it's English, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, so like I could have earned money just by wearing a tap out T-shirt or wearing Venom T-shirt, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I've always shot myself in the foot by not doing it because this is what I do. I've done it all for my career and that sort of thing. So now it's a bit annoying that it looks like that I may be forced not to do that.
Oh, man.
And I'd be pretty pissed about that because I've been turning down money. For me, it's not about money, so...
It's identity, I suppose. It's your own brand. Yeah.
Yeah. As in, what I do is upon my, for my uncle who used to be a bare knuckle boxer, and that was what he used to wear. So I was like, well, that's what I want to wear, So for me, it's more sentimental, and I like to do it. I believe I definitely could still wear my hat, but I don't know if I'll be able to wear my braces and shorts. That's still yet to be.
Well, keep us posted on that. We'll start a campaign to get them to make you some of those if it takes it, because it's especially.
Not even make me some of those. I won't want to wear a Reebok vest, and that stuff. It's like the whole point. I could have had my trilby have tap out written down the side of it, but I won't do that either. As in, I don't want to sell. I'm not a NASCAR. I don't want to sell myself to the devil. I want a bit of identity. Don't get me wrong. Our sponsors are a very important part of the sport, and I honestly, believe that. And I think it's great that sponsors help fighters out in the sport. But I think identity is very important. And I did wear. Venom. I've been with Venom for many years now, and they've looked after me very well, and they understood that. So I still got paid to wear their shirt, but I wore it after my fight. I wore it at press conferences. I wore it walking around the arena and that sort of stuff. I didn't wear it just for that 4-minute or 3-minute walkout, whatever, how long it takes.
Yeah.
That's where I just wore that as my costume.
Amazing, yeah. It's an interesting time. Have you spoken to the UFC about it, or are you waiting till it gets closer to the actual card?
I need to speak to the right people about it. I think if I speak to I need to speak to the right people. If I speak to just the organ grinder, I'd probably just get shut down. No, we can't do this for anybody. So I think I need to go a bit higher than the average guy, I think. So I need to wait to speak to maybe Dana or something like that and see what they say.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens with that. You said your uncle was a bare knuckle boxer. That was a. Did you ever see him fight, or was he? Is something just?
He died when I was 4. So
sorry, mate.
They didn't really get to. Yeah, it's your fault, definitely. So I didn't really get to. Obviously know him too much, but I heard a lot of stories about him. I saw pictures of him and that sort of stuff, So I kind of, he was always intrigued. I was always intrigued by him,
Amazing, yeah. It's obviously in the blood then, fella. It's your style's been one of the most exciting, and especially with the UK fighters coming through, you've been one of the pioneers of MMA over this side of the pond, and we are grateful. You really are one of the icons of the sport, one of my favourites, without a doubt. I mean, how do you're watching an era of MMA change? How do you see the UK, the English MMA scene at the minute? We've got people like Darren Till. I know we've got Arnold Aaron, coming on the Berlin can.
For this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, is it a healthy scene at the minute? Do you see it growing as far as prospects coming through?
Well, I just think that I've been in the sport for a long time, and I've just seen the sport completely change. Obviously without going into too much deal, but I remember back in the day it was style versus style, like a jiu-jitsu guy versus a wrestler, a boxer versus a kickboxer. It was always now and also people coming into the sport. Even someone like Machida, he came in with a really big karate background.
Yeah.
Now people don't do that. People are coming in as ultimate fighters. You saw the Mexican kid at the weekend who fought Charles Rose.
Oh, Rodriguez. Yeah, absolutely.
He looked so good. I mean, like, it's like, and he just had no background. You don't really have much of a background now. They're coming in as ultimate fighters, So you're coming in with not maybe techniques that you have to adjust for MMA. You're coming in learning the game from the ground up. And also, what I find also is getting more is like, it's a job. People can see this as a career path. So say if you was a really good athlete in America or whatever, you may go do, I'm going to pursue boxing, or maybe I'm going to go do wrestling, or maybe I'm going to go do well, man, I'm not wrestling so much because you don't get paid for that either, but maybe I'm going to go be a football player, basketball player, or something else, where you're going to get paid. Well, people, now athletes see that this is a proper career path, and this, to my eyes, is the number one combat sport, and so people are getting into this sport,
Yeah.
That's what I find, that the level outside the UFC is so. I mean, if I was not in the UFC now, obviously I've been in it, I'd think, shit, man, it's going to be hard to get in the UFC nowadays because there's so much. I mean, there's so much talent I know around, which is not even signed by the UFC. People, like you say, Arnold just got signed this weekend, but it's mainly a training. But I've trained with a guy for years, a guy called Solomon Kakai. He's from Sweden. I've known him for years, and he's phenomenal. He's been training American top team now, solid now for like 2 or 3 years, and this kid's, I mean, like, he should be in the UFC. Like, I mean, so I think sometimes people get in the UFC too quick, and it's a hard place to find your game or find your level, but I think when I got signed to the UFC, I had a good base, and I was able to stay there. Like how I see that you don't want to get into the UFC and not be able to compete with the top 10. Not say beat everyone in the top 10, but you want to be able to get in there and be able to compete with the top 10. And this guy called Selwan, I think he could get into the weight class and compete with anyone in that division and not looked outclassed,
Absolutely. No, the whole thing's changed. The whole the world of MMA has changed dramatically over the last 5-10 years, especially, and it's exciting times. And you're still at the top of the game, mate. You're still recognised. I know you're coming off 2 losses there, but you're still recognised as one of the best out there. So, I mean, are there any pressure coming off 2 losses for this fight?
Well, I don't know. I've been here before, actually. The last time I lost 2 fights was back in the day. I lost to a guy called Alex Owen, who at the time was 18-0 or something like that, which actually I still thought I won the fight. I lost a split decision. And then I went to I fought a guy called Hideo Takuro in K1 Dynamite, 155 pounds. I fought him. And I ended up getting armbarred. So I lost 2 fights in a row, and then I remember coming back from that, and coming back to England from fighting in front of 40,000 people in K1 Dynamite. I came back and fought in Cage Rage, but it wasn't even the main Cage Rage at the time. It was Cage Rage Contenders back in the day, and I was the main event. And I fought a guy called Vaughan Lee, which everyone obviously knows Vaughan Lee now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I was fighting Vaughan Lee, and at the time he was 7-2. On a 7-fight winning streak, and I just coming off 2 losses, and I just thought to myself, if I lose this fight, right, I'm going to quit the sport. Obviously, I'm not in it just to make up the numbers. I want to compete in this sport. So, like, in my head, I was like, if I lose, this sport's not for me. I'm just going to go jog on and continue with other things, sort of thing. And I just remember going into the fight in such a bad mood. I was like so miserable, just like couldn't give a shit about anything, and just wanted to just literally just fight. And I remember like fighting a bit dirty as well, which is not very rare like me. I remember him being on top of me at one point, instead of being in side control, and he was being a bit dirty. He put his chin in my eyeball, just to make
crush the socket.
I just reached around and I gouged him as hard as I could with my hand, and I did not give a shit. And he yelled and stuff like that, and then we got up and we started fighting. And I remember getting up against the cage and I kneed him in the nuts. And I knew what, didn't mean to do it. Don't get me wrong, but I knew that I needed him in the nuts. And he started holding his nuts, and I just didn't care. So I grabbed the guillotine, and started trying to choke him out. And then like he's defending the guillotine, and then he fell because he's defending the guillotine. I gave up top position, and I ended up mounting him. And as soon as I let go of the guillotine, I just threw down a massive elbow and cracked him in the head. And he wasn't allowed to do elbows back in those days. And that's when the ref stopped it, and he pulled me off and told me off, took me to my corner, and asked Vaughan if he was okay and all that sort of stuff. I just remember being in a foul mood. I just wanted to fight.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
And then he obviously he said, yeah, okay, no problem. And then I just went back to fighting, and yeah, I ended up TKOing. Me and Vaughan, I laugh about it. So me and Vaughan are actually really good friends now and stuff like that. But you know, I just remember at the time just being in such a foul mood, you know, for fighting. I've never been in that mood ever fighting. You know. Wow. That's the last time I come off 2 losses. But
I think you were channeling your uncle there, mate. That's some street brawling.
And after that fight, I went on and won like 8 fights or 9 fights in a row, I think. So I'm not saying I'm going to go do that now. Because that would be a world champion, obviously, in the UFC, winning 9 fights in a row. But you know, I'm not. You know, losing's part of the sport. It's like, it's like I don't dwell on the past. I still, as an athlete, still want to get better every time I enter that gym, and I still think I'm still improving to this day. I think the day I stop improving will be the day I retire, or the day my body says, look, I can't handle this anymore, I need to retire. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going, you know. I feel I'm a good competitor, and I'm good at competing. I fight better than I train half the time.
Amazing. Well, look, it's good to hear that you've still got the hunger for it, and those improvements are still coming. It's such an exciting fight for us as fans waiting to see. It's one of the ones that I think could steal the show on this card. I really do appreciate the time. I don't want to eat any more of it because I know it sounds like you've got 50,000 dogs around you waiting to go for a walk. No,
I'm actually I'm at Pitbull's house at the moment.
You're at Pitbull's house, brilliant.
Yeah, he's in Pitbull. He's in Brazil at the moment on holiday, and like a friend of mine is is house sitting, so I'm just over here chilling at the house. Yeah, he's got a couple of dogs.
It sounds like it. It's either that or he's got a lot of tap dancers in the background there, mate. That's it.
No.
Hey, but seriously, thank you for the time. I wish you all the luck for this. And it's exciting, card. I really do think this is a great matchup, and fingers crossed we get you back in the win column and onwards and upwards from there, mate. All right.
No problem, man. Thanks for your time.
Hey, all the best, mate. Speak soon. All right, take care. Cheers.
Thanks, Brian. All right, bye.
So that was One Punch Brad Pickett. Really pleased to have talked to him and got him on the pod. Very excited indeed. One of my favourites. So thank you to Brad for sparing the time. Find him on Twitter at one_punch on Twitter. Very interesting to hear his thoughts on the UFC deal. Reebok deal. Very excited indeed about his fight coming up against Almeida at UFC 189. Brilliant matchup and could leave both fighters bloodied and worn out by the end of that one. So we'll wait and see and wish him all the best for his fight camp and that fight. I think speaking of fights, we've got another card coming up with Machida versus Romero, Yoel Romero next week. Interesting fight. I like them both as individual fighters, but I think coming together it's not going to be as exciting as it looks, if you understand what I mean. Machida coming off 2 pretty nasty beatings, Weidman, and then a deadly finish against Rockhold against him, and coming back fairly quickly, maybe too quickly in my opinion, up against Romero, the highly touted Olympian, beast of a man, a huge human being, and a huge middleweight. And now Rockhold's sort of laid down a bit of a blueprint of how to easily get Machida out of there. Easier said than done, actually. Get him on the ground and cause some damage, but we shall see what happens with this. I'd love it to be an exciting fight, but I've got a feeling Machida's going to go back to his points fighting, distance blitzing, and not engage physically with Romero. And Romero's going to be chasing him for 3 rounds and tiring by the third. So I'm going to go with Machida on this one on that basis. But if Romero can get hold of him early and cause some damage and ruffle his feathers, then Yoel Romero could be putting himself right up there as a contender. And maybe we'll get that Jacare Souza Yoel Romero fight back in action again, because I thought that was a good matchup with Romero's ground game, Romero's wrestling, and Jacare's ground game. So we'll wait and see. Not too many other exciting fights on this card as far as names going. Pozzombino is on there. He's fighting Lorenz Larkin. I do like Pozzombino as well, Santiago Pozzombino. Not only because I can't say his name, but I think he's quite an exciting fighter. I'm going to pick him against Larkin for this one. I think he's coming through. And then Eddie Truck Gordon is fighting Carlos Jr., the winner of the Brazil Ultimate Fighter. Both coming off losses. Truck Gordon not looked very impressive against his last two opponents. Finished with a deadly high kick in one, and then 3-round, not too exciting fight in his hometown in another where he didn't look great. Whether it was the adrenaline from fighting in his hometown, but to say all the hype that was behind him when he won the Ultimate Fighter, I think he really has got to put on display. But Carlos Jr. Had Patrick Cummings last time, and Patrick Cummings completely dominated him on the ground, so he'll be looking to step back. And I'm gonna pick Carlos Jr. for this one. I just think Eddie Truck Gordon hasn't looked that good in his last two fights, and I think we'll probably see Carlos take this one. So we'll wait and see. Before we disappear, another big thank you to at We Are MMA UK for all the support. Thanks for everything you're doing. Please check them out on Twitter. Find them on Facebook. I'll put links up to theirs as well. Again, find Peter Knox if you're interested in the UFC Glasgow after party. Going to be a great event. If you're up there, a brilliant way to extend your night. Go and meet some of the fighters, hang out with some other fans, and have a few drinks as well. So I'll put up the links to that. Again, find him on at NoxyCube on Twitter. Thank you again to my two guests, Mathew Dawley at Dawley170 and One Punch Brad Pickett at _punch. And next week we should have, I'm hoping to line up a couple more fighters for you. One more off of the UFC Glasgow card, and a Bama fighter who's on his way up and assigned to do to go with Bama in their first trip to Ireland, following the UFC over there, because MMA's are so rife and the fans are so good. So very excited to bring you that. If you've got any questions for me, find me on Twitter at Throwdown MMA Pod, or on Gmail, throwdownmmapod@gmail.com. Let me know what sort of what you think of the show, fighters you'd like me to get on, comedians you're interested in hearing from, anything like that, or if you just want to say hello. Look, it's been brilliant to get back to you. Sorry again for the 3 weeks hiatus. I will see you next week. Have a good one.